Hello, we are coping with a capital P. I'm Dr. Lydia, and you are.
I am Scott Kittle. I am this lady's husband and one of the pastors here in this five church connection.
Yes, it is connection. Lower Columbia United Methodist connection of five churches. I've learned
Yeah.
today that it is actually becoming a more successful model because we are the model that combined two states. It is a
It's true.
cross state model. And I will say later more about it, but I've learned from our district superintendent, Karen Hernandez, that last week, Judy from St. Helens spoke about our ministry, and it's good always to have some feedback. And it seems like St. Helens is very happy about how we are trying to do ministry together. But again, we are coping with the capital P, and which it means, and my AirPod fell out, is that it means that we are not just sharing coping skills with people, but what we do is we try to help people to understand that it's not just a living and having a knowledge of certain coping skills, which is important, but it is also about simply living our lives as well as we can, but also becoming. This coping life talk became a different podcast because we started feeling that skills are not enough as much as they are important. What is important is to learn how to change ourselves. And Easter season is all about that. So, Scott, can you tell me what was that last Sunday about?
Oh my goodness. Well, so this last Sunday was about how do we live now in the face of the reality that Christ is risen. It's not enough to declare he's risen, hallelujah, and of course that's very important. But now the message of Easter is how do we then live? How do we
That's
live
so
in the
how?
face
Yeah,
of this reality?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember, our sermons were titled in the churches where we preached, of course, because we have five churches, as people know. And in the churches where we do not preach, we have our other pastors. And so in Rainier this last Sunday and Castle Rock, we
Mhm.
had different pastors preaching, correct?
Right, that's correct. Yes.
Right. And so here we are preaching this topic, you and I together. Uh, and we need to tell, I told that Kalama that actually we never share what we preach about. And I joked, I said, for not stealing each other's stories. So
Hey,
I
wait a
was in
minute.
Longview.
Hey.
I know. Oh, I know. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Uh,
What do you mean laughing?
oh, of course we don't steal each other's stories, but we certainly admire them and maybe get some insight or inspiration from them. Oh, there's an idea there that I could develop without stealing the story. And you have
Yeah.
such
And of,
great stories
oh,
yourself that you,
and
you
you
have
do
no.
too. Yeah.
Some of them
You
are okay.
do too. You have great stories. And I loved your stories about the Great Depression time for this Sunday.
Mm,
So you
mm.
approached that life beyond the open tomb from one angle, and I approached it from another angle, which was connected. In my case, I will share with our viewers that in Longview, I shared the story about how when we just got married, and we've learned how to actually unlearn certain traditions, not just habits. So
Yeah. Um,
and I shared about how we actually had to walk on eggshells, and I covered it last episode. That's what our episode last Tuesday was about. How we lived for quite a while walking on eggshells. Remember?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
So,
probably the experience of every newlywed couple,
oh,
as they try
absolutely.
and find what the right rhythms are, what the boundaries are, how to relate to one another, and how do I need to adjust to this new life? That can feel like eggshells.
Very interesting. But then, how about when two people start dating, like you and I did, 20 some years ago, and is it not that we're supposed to accept each other for who we are, and just with all our bads and goods? Why did we have to relearn actually? Unlearn, I would say. So, what did we have to unlearn? What did you have to unlearn?
Well, I think an important point to remind ourselves up front is when you're dating, you tend to put your very best foot forward, um, and and maybe you're not as transparent as you should be about your habits, your attitudes. So we're not always as honest during the dating time as we are during the marriage time. And
And
so
maybe
maybe for some people, but you're always putting your very best foot forward, and maybe even fudging a little bit on who you are. And then for some people, once that wedding ring is there and you're living together, like, oh wow,
yeah. Well, that's
maybe
very
might as
true.
careful.
Very true. And it's not good because what I advocate now for is when you date, show your true self. Because why putting this kind of throwing the sand into another person's eyes and showing who you are not? Yeah, there is a dating etiquette,
Sure.
and everybody knows about that. So that we need to be polite, and
Yeah.
we need to let another person speak their minds. And you and I actually learned quite a few things that
Mm.
later in our marriage that we did not know during our dating. But so what I had to unlearn, honestly, if you ask me, would you ask me what did I have to unlearn?
Lydia, that raises an interesting question. What did you have to unlearn?
Thank you. Thank you for asking me this question. And that
Ah,
is a good illustration how the conversation should go. You see,
mm,
let's share with our viewers that conversation should be like a ping pong. When you play ping pong, so you
yeah.
throw a ball and then you wait for another person to throw a ball. And it's actually one of the my habits I had to unlearn. That I remember that, and that's what actually my sister Irina had to learn here. And unlearn as well, that she said, and I shared it in some churches, why Americans even bother to ask,
Mm,
how are you
mhm,
doing? And then they
yeah,
just don't even slow down and they pass. She says,
yeah,
why asking this question if they're not interested?
yeah.
So she did not know that this question, how are you doing, actually does not um, open a door to share your life
Right.
story. And she
Yeah.
said, I remember at that time when she just moved to America, she was shocked because, she was going through this period like any immigrant goes through when the language is not yet ready to help you to express yourself, right? So
Mm,
then, second, you have difficulties everywhere. Going to the store, going to the bank, ordering food, and so I remember that she got first of all upset about that question, why even asking,
mhm.
and so then she had to learn that it's not about telling your whole life story, but it's a ping pong. Then you simply say, "How are you doing?" So there are much better questions if you want to hear a personal story. Then you can ask maybe, and please help me with this. You can say, "How's your week going? How's your
Mm,
day going? How can I pray for you?" You see, then a person is surprised that you are actually showing interest in
mhm.
this woman's or man's life. What are other questions you can ask?
Oh goodness. I read just recently uh, about a way that a couple can connect better with one another on a deeper level. And one of the questions was, what weight are you carrying today that I might be able to help you bear? Another question, and that's
Okay.
kind of a deep one right there, right? And the other one is, uh, what is it? What is it that you need from me most of all today? And that could be a daily question, or maybe maybe not quite as frequently, but it's a little bit deeper than, hey, how's it going, honey? You having a good day? What was your day like? And I know that I recall something that our daughter-in-law often asks our grandkids, what 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 are you thankful for today? What was the one thing today that made you the happiest? I think you and I have both been around when we had those conversations at the table with our daughter-in-law and the grandkids.
Very true. And so you see, this is what one of the things I had to unlearn, for example. First of all, not to answer questions like how you doing with a long story. That's one of the questions
Hmm.
I had to learn how to answer. My other unlearning experience was when I have to admit, and I know that people do not believe me, that I am a very shy person. I am. It makes me nervous when I'm in front of people. And tell me if you do not have those problems. People, I invite you who you follow us and who watch us today, or you watch us later. Uh, Log in at any time you have an opportunity after dinner or maybe during the week. This podcast will continue rolling. So, what was that you had to unlearn in your life? But also, if you're a very shy person, how do you handle that? So, Scott, I know that we talked about that, and maybe you would say, "Oh, Lydia, you're not a shy person. I am," and you might maybe help me with that to prove that. But the reason for that is, growing up in Russia, I was trained and parented in a way, and at school, we were taught that girls do not look straight into a man's eyes.
Mhm.
So I remember that, and it became part of me. It kind of really in your core that you keep your eyes down when you talk to a man, because otherwise we were taught that you do appear not a modest woman, so girls should keep their eyes down and they should never talk to a man first, do not initiate the conversation, so always wait when you're asked. And of course, in our case, at least we grew up sitting with adults at the table talking, of course when we are asked, right? But
Mm.
I know that in other republics in the Soviet Union at that time, and even in Russia itself, with other different minority groups, that like in Georgia, for example, women will cook dinner or lunch,
Mhm.
but they
Yeah,
will eat in the kitchen.
right.
They do not sit down with the whole group of guests at the table. They just sit in the kitchen and they feel very comfortable eating together and laughing and talking. But as guests, we were guests in Georgia, so we women, but we would sit with men at the table. You see how different is that? So,
Yes.
what do you think you observed in me, if I may ask, in our marriage that I really unlearned it, or maybe I still have that habit sometimes, not to start conversation first.
Oh goodness. Uh, I probably need to think a little bit deeper on some of that, but you're I have experienced you to not be remotely shy when it comes to speaking in public. You come across as very confident and able to I don't know if I want to use the phrase command a crowd. So public speaking, you've never really come across to me as being shy, but where I have seen you shy is when it comes to performing music.
Oh my goodness, don't even start.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
oh
have
God.
seen more than a little bit of stage fright with you,
Hmm.
where even though you practiced the stuffing out of a song in our practice times, and then you get on the stage and you get nervous and you miss your entries and the fingering falls apart and the confidence is nowhere to be found.
Oh, absolutely. But when you're among professionals like Everett Divan, the king of
Oh,
jazz in Kansas City,
yeah,
and who am
yeah,
I? But I was blessed and lucky enough to become his student. And
yes.
remember those evenings in piano, is
Mm.
it piano restaurant or how was it called?
Oh well, there was the
Piano
Phoenix.
bar,
There was
piano bar.
Anabar.
And
Okay, yeah.
yeah, piano bar and the Phoenix. And so I remember sitting and waiting for your turn to sing. Oh my goodness, your hands are cold and sweaty, and
Yeah.
you start shivering, and you wait for his generous nod to start. Yeah, so yes, I think I was able to unlearn my shyness when it comes to public speaking.
Yes.
Also, I had to unlearn it as a leader,
Oh,
because a
yes.
woman as a leader, it's a totally different ball game. A man comes
Absolutely.
into the room,
Yeah.
and that's it. Especially a tall man like you,
Yeah.
that's it. You command the room. In our case, women, especially when we are not 6 foot tall, it takes time. It takes time to build trust and build relationship before people can actually sense your authority, trust you. And so I had to learn in my 30 years of
Mhm.
ministry, and even before that, I had a corporate work job, and then I had a non-profit job. And so you have to learn to present yourself in a way that people don't sense your how rapidly your heart
Mhm.
beats,
Oh, right, right,
or
right. Yeah,
how you didn't sleep whole night,
right.
be nervous, right, stressed out. But when you start speaking, then somehow you have that I would say not a routine, but you have that pattern in your voice, and suddenly just
Mm,
yeah, you are
sure.
comfortable. But with singing, oh goodness! So what did you have to unlearn, Scott?
Oh my, oh my. I think what I had to unlearn most of all was to be a married man.
Okay,
So I
wow.
first I was married before, and the marriage had lots of problems, and I was definitely part of the problem. And then I was single for quite a number of years, and then we met and we fell in love and uh, got married. And I had to unlearn a lot of bachelor stuff, and also maybe some habits that I had developed in my first marriage that were not very conducive to being a good husband. So there were many years in the early parts of our marriage where I was needing to unlearn because I could tell that I was not making you happy in a number of ways. So hopefully, I've unlearned the vast majority of those. And a lot of it has to do with selfishness and uh, thinking about your own priorities, your own needs, uh, and you cannot do that as a married person. You really can't. You have to uh, be very much in tune with the other person needs and give them space to speak their mind and share their opinion and be respected. And it took a number of years to get to that place. And I think we're in a much better place today than we were in those first years. But it was hard. It took a lot of time of me saying, no, it's not all about you, Scott. You really need to be much more in tune with the needs of your wife.
Thank you. I did not even expect such honesty and your openness, Scott.
What do you mean?
Thank you.
I'm not nervous. I'm not honest with you. What?
No, but to speak with such openness publicly. Thank you. Yes, we did have such rough moments, and I'm sure everybody does. We had to learn about each other's habits, and also even reassess our values. Like, for example, I just have placed on a screen kind of a poll for our viewers. And so, what one habit did you have to unlearn, and why? So, give up a bad habit or reassess my values. So, because what you're talking about, bad habits that you developed being a bachelor, right? I had to reassess. I tried to think, did I have my bad habits? Probably I did. But what I would say, like with not looking straight into the eyes of a person I talk to, if it is a male, that's mostly like my value, because we were trained that it's a value to be a modest girl, modest
Sure.
woman. I know our airports today are falling out of our ears.
Wow.
Maybe
Right.
our ears became so wide and big that the airports do not fit in.
Because we listen with such intensity.
Right. We are playing ping pong very, very
Right.
cautiously, right? Okay, but thank you, Scott. This is very important. So the poll today is, what one habit did you have to unlearn and why? So first, you can put give up a bad habit. And another one is reassess my values. And I invite our church leaders and all people who follow us, not only answer for yourself, but because it could be a tradition of a church or family that you maybe value, but at one point you have to reassess. Is it still a value, or it's actually some kind of a dead tradition that keeps you from progressing, from growing? And the reason we talk today about changing our habits and unlearning, especially unlearning. Changing is easy sometimes. You change it one thing and you think, oh, I changed. No, that's what we call our podcast CoPing, which is more becoming. And that's where we will share stories of people who were able to live through a very difficult and challenging time and tragic time, but they did not break. Not because they were tougher than others, but because they were able um, to I don't know, is it it's not a skill, but it's simply maybe a character feature that it does not matter what, you continue living, because you might have responsibilities for your aging parents. You might have responsibility for your children. You can't just check out. You can't just leave your marriage because you're unhappy. Maybe it's you. What you are saying,
Oh.
I'm not saying you, but I'm saying us all. What I've learned in my life, that it does not matter who you are married to. You can get a divorce, you can start a second marriage, you can start a third marriage, but what you do, you bring yourself into every relationship. You bring yourself into every workplace. Maybe you've been fired, right? Or maybe you were laid off or you quit because you got upset. But then in the end, if you did not change yourself or better unlearn certain habits, if it was you causing some tension or maybe poor productivity or misunderstanding, that maybe it's a time alone with everything that you expect from other people. Maybe also to reassess your values and also unlearn some habits. Last Tuesday, last week, we talked about this walking on eggshells, remember?
Right.
And the reason for that was we thought we missed Easter, remember? And
Right.
then we've learned we did not miss Easter. We got another chance. What is that? Can you elaborate on that?
Oh goodness. Well, so for Americans, for Westerners, Easter is one day a year, right? But if if you engage with someone from in a more Eastern culture, such as my wife, who was raised in an Orthodox tradition, which which is which operates on a different calendar than we do here in the West. So it's the difference between the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar. And so for a Russian person, the Easter celebration may happen 2 weeks later than the celebration that we have here in the West, right? So you have mentioned several years now that when the Western calendar Easter comes along, you say, I don't feel like it's Easter. Easter for me is 1 week or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. And remember how on April 5, I did not even think about coloring eggs. Though it's a big thing in Russia, in our family was to color eggs. And then I thought, well, and I promise to you that I will color eggs for April 12th, which
Yeah.
was the actual Eastern Orthodox Easter. Guess
Right.
what?
Right. Didn't happen
We
either.
did not color any eggs. So I just took the brown eggs from the store and I boiled them hard boiled to illustrate how you and I walked on eggshells when we tried to learn about each other for a
Right.
long time. And all because we had the tradition in our family to crush eggshells.
Yeah.
That was it was my belief. And so when we got married, I will quickly summarize what I talked about last Tuesday.
Okay.
How when we got married and we moved in together, and so on the first morning you started making eggs and you were cracking them and stacking them into each other, half into another half. And I got so frustrated. I got upset for the reason that my mama taught me that it's a bad luck. It's a bad luck to not crush your eggshells before you throw them out. I'm not even saying that you were putting them back in a carton and putting them back into the refrigerator. And my whole mind was screaming like salmonella. But luck, I thought our marriage is just crushed. We don't have any future. And so, yeah, easy for you to laugh, but I remember how in that kitchen I was sitting and just like crying almost. How could you do that? My mama told me that we need to crush those eggshells before throwing them out to avoid the bad luck. And when you just got married, of course, you think that bad luck will apply to your marriage. And what did we do after that? We walked on
eggshells.
And it's funny, but it's not funny because we avoided even to talk about that topic.
Well, I was of the thought that here you were a former chemical engineer. You had an exceptional education in math and the sciences. How could you remotely be as superstitious as that?
Exactly.
That was something I did not understand about the mysterious Russian soul.
I'm not saying that I have one, but yeah, people do talk about that. So
Um, yeah, it shocked me because I'm not remotely superstitious in any way. Certainly, we have a lot of superstitions here in the West about walking under a ladder or the black cat or various things on Friday the 13th. I have no connection with any of that at all. So I was just shocked that that meant anything to you as a scientist, as a rational person.
So then, yes, I was a chemical engineer,
No,
and uh, and I was not always a pastor, right? But so
that's
your
true.
question was correct. Like, how could you be that superstitious as a pastor? But I remember what happened when my mother moved in with us.
Oh yeah,
So when Mama moved in with us, and I expected Mama to fix our problem, that
yes.
she would simply confront you in the kitchen and she would say, Scott, you cannot throw out eggs without crushing them, eggshells. And so, and she, to my surprise, she kept silence. And she didn't say anything. She was just talking and laughing and smiling. And I finally had to confront her. And I said, Mother, Scott is doing everything wrong. Why don't you tell him? And my mom was absolutely um, indignant. She says, What do you mean? What does he do wrong? He cooks for us. And I thought, well, he does not crush the eggshells. And mom says, and what is wrong with that? And I felt it's so unfair that I
Betrayed.
was always criticized. But you know what the lesson came after that that applies for us today. So how do we live after Easter? What do we need to unlearn to live as people who believe in resurrection? Because life beyond the tomb does not end with Easter morning, does it?
No.
So we have to learn to live every day with integrity, with love, with forgiveness. Everything we preach suddenly became kind of so essential after that morning. But somehow, even the best Christians, they just celebrate Easter and then they go home and then life goes on. And so my mom, you see, this is where I think immigrants have this they have to relearn. That's what I think immigrants, actually scientists discovered, that immigrants become 7 years younger than their
Yeah.
age. And why? Moving to another country, they have to relearn, they have to unlearn many, 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 not just bad habits, no, but simply what they knew. So, for instance, I had to learn how to look into a man's eyes to survive here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nobody
As a
will take
leader.
me. Yes, I'm the leader,
Right.
plus I have an accent. So imagine a woman with an accent, plus she will be hiding her eyes, putting them down. So who will listen to me? So I had to
Right.
unlearn that habit first.
Yes.
Second, I really had to learn how to use banking system. I had to learn to drive. And who taught me? My children. So
Yeah.
imagine when you have to uh, change roles and become dependent on another person, it makes you humble. It makes
Yes.
you a student. And
Hmm.
as a student, you have a benefit of making mistakes and become like a child. And I can sense that I got really younger here. My mom, when she was 70, she often used to say, I don't know, so strange, but I feel like I'm 19. And it's true. Remember, she was saying that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. She was.
But
She was
also,
quite a character.
yeah, but also with these eggshells, it's another thing we have to learn. She was not afraid, but because she loved you so much, she
Mhm.
did not want to judge. You see, that's another thing you learn as an immigrant. You stop judging other people because you know you don't have all the knowledge.
Sure.
But so I advise our viewers today, and I will put our poll again back, because what is very important, that It's not dangerous to ask this question, and it's not really hurtful to answer. But just when you have time and you slow down and maybe just have a cup of tea, and instead of watching TV, just take 3 minutes and think about it. What one habit did you have to unlearn? Thinking about how other people who come to this country have to unlearn deepest traditions that they had to follow. But suddenly, these traditions just simply do not fit into the life around us.
Sure,
And
sure.
I even at one point, Scott, believed that it will help everybody to live in another country for a little while, to survive, to learn
Oh,
how you
absolutely.
have to depend on another person because of the language, cultural barrier, boundaries, financial thing. So just would I invite you to think again, what one habit did you have to unlearn and why? And also, or, so one answer is a bad habit that you admit you had to unlearn, or you had to reassess my values. So the interesting thing you performed when with these eggshells, remember?
Mhm.
Because when I thought, well, I can compromise. I'm in a different culture, and I don't have to crush those eggshells. You showed me a beautiful example of love. When you suddenly, every
Uh,
time, if I don't crush those eggshells, you would say, Lydia, didn't your mother teach you that this is a bad habit to put unbroken, like whole eggshells halves into the trash can? You see
goodness.
what you've done? You not just unlearned to sort of to maybe judge another person, say that, oh, this is so superstitious. Instead, you reassess your values and you stop judging, and instead you adopted our tradition.
It's funny that I just poached some eggs this morning for breakfast, and by golly, I crushed the eggshells before I put them in the trash.
Thank you. And it's just
Uh,
interesting that I trust you, that I don't even have to ask or think about it. And maybe that's why our marriage survived.
well, so this is part of the compromise, the adjustment, the adaptation that we have to make in a marriage or a relationship to make it successful. You talked about uh, the adjustments as an immigrant. One of the challenges, from what I've observed in for immigrants, is finding the balance. What traditions and elements of my culture do I retain, and what adaptations do I need to make to assimilate and fit in? If I'm going to be part of this culture, I need to maybe make some adjustments. And that, of course, applies not only to an immigrant coming into a new country, but a person coming into a new job, a person coming into uh, a marriage, a, moving to a different part of the country. I think about how how we moved from the Bible Belt of Missouri up into the Pacific Northwest. Quite a bit of a different culture up here, at least in some parts of the Northwest. It's about survival. It's about fitting in. It's about uh, helping people feel like you respect their culture as much as you do your own.
Right. But also think about our model now, our Lower Columbia United Methodist Connection,
Connect
LCUMC,
UMC.
right?
Yeah.
It's connection. I remember Rochelle came up with that word connection, and many people insisted we stay to this United Methodist identity. And I appreciate our core group so much because we have a core group, and we will meet. I will put on a screen that we will meet with our group, core group, on April 29th at 1 p.m. to talk about one big event. And the working title for that is Festival of Hope. The
Mhm.
reason for that is that we are tell about our model. How do you see that? While I'm putting that title on the screen.
Oh goodness.
So
Well, so the model has to do with bringing together five churches from two different states to share resources, to work together for a common mission. The making new disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world, and it's becoming more organic. It's more about leadership sharing, and it's growing stronger and more stable all the time. So Pastor Lydia and I are preaching at all five churches. So we're sharing ourselves out among five churches, but then we also draw from some wonderful resources within the connection, for leadership, for preaching, for small group uh, small group leadership, and it's a wonderful thing to see these five different communities with their own identities coming together to as one larger community to do the good work of God and enjoy each other in fellowship.
thank you for saying that, Scott. Also, with that model that we first, I think it was such a shock, I would say, honestly, when we've learned that we will be pastoring five churches. But it was a
Ah!
comfort. Oh, no. But also in two states, Oregon and Washington, and two people. But think about how many wonderful pastors we have, how many wonderful lay speakers we have, and certified lay ministers. So the thing is that it's all about collegial approach, collaborative approach,
Yes.
whatever word you use, partnership. But it took us a while to all churches to start understanding that actually the benefit of that community, larger extended community, is like extended family.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
extended families could be different. One option is like you never meet, you just know that you have, by law, you have new relatives. And then maybe once in a while, when it is a funeral, you meet, but it's not a relationship, no
Right.
warmth. But
Yeah.
another example of a good and healthy extended family, I would say the family of my daughter, our daughter Julia. So
Mhm.
Curtis, they have extended family, but look how connected they are all.
Oh
My
goodness.
gosh,
Uh,
supportive, visiting each other, moving even closer to each other, to be there for each other when it's a difficult time or happy time. And that's what I think this model, in a way, subconsciously, we applied to our connection. Because what we see now, instead of having these spread apart churches that don't just know that by whatever force from maybe above, they became a connection. But because of our core group, look what happened. The new name came up. Instead of a Western Columbia River Cooperative, it became Lower Columbia United Methodist Connection. Connection is a very rich word that says much more than cooperative.
right.
Also, people now learn that we have an opportunity to have events together. And we have quite a few, like ice cream social. So, but also now we have this, and I'm finishing typing right here. Thursday, so I'm putting information about exercise group. So
Right.
and I will finish just in a second, but I will just put it right now as in the shape as it is now. And so we started these small groups. Why? Because only this way people can know each other, know us better. So, and we are getting close to the end of our podcast tonight, but I wanted to invite people and encourage people from each of five churches to join these new groups. So, Kalama United Methodist Church and Castle Rock have the exercise groups already for over a month. And they are over 8 people now, And interestingly enough, some people from other churches started going to each of them, exercising.
Wonderful.
Right. So like a
Oh,
Monday in Kalama, Wednesday in Castle Rock. And now what I did not finish typing yet is Thursday. Mary Foot started a new group in Longview, and she calls it soul stretching. So
mm,
stretching is all about everything. So it's about praying, studying together, and also exercising. So I personally lead with our leaders together Monday and Wednesday group, and I joined Thursday with my short part of exercises. But it's not just bodily exercise; it's a spiritual exercise because we learn how to distress, how to pray, and how to pray for each other, how to be in community. So, what we want to end with today is that God gives us an opportunity, an invitation to live beyond the open tomb.
yes.
And that means that it's not just one time event. Okay, resurrection. Yes, we know theoretically, many of us, what resurrection is. But what's next? How do you live after that? How do you get courage to live? How do
Mhm.
you learn to live through difficulties? That's life beyond the open tomb. Staying in connection, relearning, because it's a relearning our habits, maybe giving up some traditions, and majorly then never say, oh, I missed that Easter, right? Like we thought.
Right.
No, we never miss anything. Even if we miss something, actual event, we did not go to church for Easter. God always gives us a second chance. So we need to learn how to live beyond the open tomb. And so next Tuesday we will talk about more about how to do it. And also there are different topics that we want to cover every week. So next week, what do you think we want to talk about? Now we touched basics on how important it is to unlearn bad habits or maybe reassess our life and maybe try something different because wherever we go, we bring ourselves. But what else do you think we can share next Tuesday?
Oh my goodness, that is a huge question. I think about Easter as Jesus giving us life everlasting. Eternal life is more than just life that goes on forever, that starts when we die and we go to heaven, and that goes on forever, but really it's an eternal quality of life that starts now. And so what does it mean for us to have an eternal quality of life? Well, it's a life that's if it's a life that has eternity's values and views, heaven's values, uh, that thinks about the values, the things that are truly important. And it I think it calls us to consider what are the things that I have been valuing in my life, that I spend my time and my money on, that really have very little value, that just that flitter away, that blow away like smoke. So maybe thinking uh, about values that are much higher than the day-to-day stuff.
Okay, wonderful. So, how about if we have this topic for the next Tuesday and we invite our members again? I will show that the questionnaire that we had, the poll. So, please answer those questions. We will work on them and we will see how that maybe will feed into our next topic. But what we will talk about next Sunday is what did you unlearn? And please help us to with your answers to know and have illustrations and examples of what each of you uh, was able to unlearn, and also not just stopping there. Okay, I unlearn, but how does it impact your becoming? So,
Yes.
because you and I, we will continue having conversations about what happened to us, and
Mhm.
also how we continue becoming, right, every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so at this on this note, we will let you all go. We are Lydia and Scott, or Dr. Lydia Stomina and Pastor Scott Kiddle. We are co-hosts of this podcast, Coping Life. So coping with the capital P, becoming. So question for the next time is, what did you unlearn? And now we move to, what are you becoming by
Mhm.
unlearning certain things and reassessing certain things in life, because we want to learn to live beyond the open tomb. So you did not lose anything. It's always a good opportunity to know that God always gives us a second chance. Don't
Yeah.
you think, Scott?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Grateful
Okay.
for that.
Okay, we have lots of prayer requests today. So follow our website, follow our newsletters, and we have all the names of people we pray for. But here we will not name individuals because it's not safe to name people on Facebook. We simply will say that, please lift up all people who are in pain, lift up this country that goes through a very difficult time, uncertain time. Pray for the leaders to become wiser and
Mhm.
have some consciousness in all everything decisions that they make. Every decision should be righteous, and we are accountable, especially living beyond the open tomb. Each of us is accountable, responsible
Yeah.
for every action and every word. So have a good evening. We will see you next Tuesday. Thank you, Scott. And we will see you next Tuesday. Goodbye.
Have a great week.